Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. In a shock to end all shocks, Tulsi Gabbard has announced she's leaving the Democratic Party. Here's my shock face. So, before we get to her long anti-woke diatribe, I just want to really show this metamorphosis. I interviewed her in I think it was 2019 or 2020, while she was running for president, and I questioned her on her previous positions that were not very LGBTQ friendly, were hostile to LGBTQ people, supporting things like conversion therapy. I want to show you how she sounded just a few years ago. Let's take a listen.
So I want to ask you, obviously, people have a right to change, but, I criticize Hillary Clinton for political expedience in changing politically to be for same-sex marriage. So why did your views change as far as gay marriage, homosexuality in general, and why should people think it's not just political expediency?
First of all, as a kid and a young person, I had no idea what conversion therapy was. I was raised in a very conservative family. I held views then that I no longer hold, and those are views and things that I said and did that I regret very much. And I've apologized for that, and I will continue to apologize for whatever pain or hardship that I caused. Through my deployments to the Middle East, I saw and experienced firsthand the oppression and the hardship that's caused when you have a government that tries to act as a moral arbiter for their people. This is on LGBT people, on women, on people of other religions or minority religions. And I came to the understanding of, if I am to fight for freedom, if I believe in the freedoms that we hold dear in this country, those freedoms are for everyone. And I came back from those deployments, I came back from those experiences being forced to confront with the views that I had held previously and my deep conviction and belief in the values that we hold dear here.
So pretty good a few years ago, sounded contrite, like she had a genuine evolution, pointed out as a congresswoman, her voting for pro LGBTQ legislation. Boy, I got to take an L on this, a loss, because she seemed genuine to me. Let's now move forward to this morning's gem, Tulsi Gabbard on why she's leaving the Democratic Party. See if you could tell a difference in tone, rhetoric, and overall bullshit.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans.
Oh boy. Extreme makeover. Tulsi Gabbard. That is quite an evolution in just a few years. First of all, let's just put it out there. I don't really give a shit that she's leaving the Democratic Party. I mean, the Democratic Party is corrupt. We cover it all the time. It's full of warmongers, just like the Republican Party is corrupt and full of warmongers. So, this isn't hey, Tulsi, don't be mean to Democrats. I don't care. She don't want to be a Democrat. Godspeed. But you have to actually look at just the total empty, disingenuous, opportunist bullshit of this woman. It just smells to the high heavens. I mean, let's just go through the list. I just jotted down a few notes. Elitist cabal of warmongers. Okay, I mean, that's true. But if it's an elitist cabal of warmongers, why are you yourself part of the machine? I mean, this is her last year. This past Independence Day had special significance for me. while I was deployed to the Horn of Africa, working as a civil affairs officer in support of a special operations mission to go after Al-Qaeda affiliated jihadists, I was promoted to lieutenant colonel on the 4th of July. The ceremony was quiet and informal, no fanfare, just a handful of fellow soldiers present, and an opportunity for me to reflect on the great privilege I feel in wearing the cloth of this country, a deep appreciation of the freedoms we cherish, and the solemn oath to defend these freedoms. What business do we have in Africa? Hunting Al-Qaeda. What business do we have at the, name your 800 or so military bases we have around the world? I mean, listen, I'm not attacking people for serving in the military. A lot of people serve in the military because they don't have, a much better option. But Tulsi Gabbard, this elite cabal that she is part of, that she's serving in Africa, and all these, she served obviously in Afghanistan. Kind of a incongruity there in terms of this elite cabal that you're still actively part of. I digress. Now, she talked about cowardly wokeness. Let me explain, folks. Sure, there is, examples where Democratic Party goes too far, focuses too much on terms and this and that. But wokeness and the anti-wokeness has really just become a term and a thought process for racism, bigotry, basically allowing yourself or condoning inappropriate rhetoric, offensive actions, and just disregarding that with, you're just, you're part of the woke brigade. Tulsi Gabbard, her language is basically what you might find on white nationalist message boards, literally neo-Nazi message boards about, everything's woke, all these woke elitist Democrats. Yeah, in some cases, it goes too far. But wokeness has just become a cloak and dagger to green light bigotry, green light exploitation, green light oppression. Not very aloha, Tulsi Gabbard. By the way, being anti-woke will get you a very, very, very stable spot on Fox News, at Republican conventions, CPAC, probably the RNC in 2024, which, mark it down now, she'll be speaking at, whether she's officially a Republican or not. Let's move on. She goes into radicalizing every issue and stoking, quote, anti-white racism. So we get a white Lives Matter jacket soon? Anti-white racism. Well, I could tell you, I've gone around the country for 8 years. I've covered a lot of stories all over this country, protest movements. I've covered exploitation, corruption, injustice in poor white neighborhoods, poor black neighborhoods, indigenous reservations. And I can tell you, yeah, we all got problems, including white people. But the anti-white racism, not very significant in this country, if at all. There is no such thing as anti-white racism. This is a fancy terminology for white supremacy. White people aren't being targeted in this country. White people, as always, since the birth of this country, are targeting black people, brown people, indigenous people, you name it. Tulsi Gabbard knows exactly what she's doing because she has no core principles. I don't even think this whole anti-war thing at this point is believable. Anti-white racism. Give me a fucking break. She goes into her God-given freedoms enshrined in our Constitution. Well, if you're so worried about the Constitution, Tulsi Gabbard, where are you on the overturning of Roe v. Wade? Because, the whole Constitution, this was enshrined by multiple court rulings. The Constitution does enshrine the right to privacy, which I'm pretty sure your womb and what you do with it is a private matter for you, your doctor. But apparently, to her, Democrats are trampling on the Constitution. I'd like to hear her on Republicans and their adherence to the Constitution. Because if you remember, when Obama had a Supreme Court seat and he was trying to appoint Merrick Garland, who's now the Attorney General, Ted Cruz and these others who walk around with that tiny little Constitution book, they tossed it to the wind and said, no, we're not going to give Obama even a hearing to appoint a Supreme Court justice. What? Well, the Constitution says, she's forgetting that part. And again, this isn't a defense of the Democratic Party. If she wants to leave, goodbye. But boy, is this selective. It's almost like she has some Republican consultants who presented a little presentation to her with all the buzzwords and phrases, try to pack all these words into a minute and a half, and you will be on your way. Fox News. Well, she already guest hosted for Tucker Carlson. Maybe you'll have a popular YouTube show. Tim Pool, Steven Crowder. Bannon has one of the most popular podcasts in America. Just hit these notes, hit these words, and you'll be ready to go. The Democratic Party, she said, is hostile to people of faith and spirituality. Okay. I mean, pretty sure churches are still open under Biden. Pretty sure you can pray however you want. I don't see I don't see the religion police coming against Republicans, but what do I know? It's interesting because hostile to people of faith and spirituality, there's a whole lot of people in this country who, are religious or Christian, and in polls, they're against the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Where's Tulsi on that? Nowhere to be found. She says, demonizing the police, but protecting criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans. Demonizing the police, but protecting criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans. Is Biden demonizing the police by giving them $32 billion more in his budget? Which is horrendous, by the way. I mean, he's Crime Bill Joe, so it's not a shock. Is that what she's talking about by demonizing the police? By giving them more money to kill unarmed black people and terrorize poor people? Protecting criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, i.e., protecting those illegal aliens at the expense of law-abiding Americans. I guess she's talking about those law-abiding Americans who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, beat up police officers, rammed police officers' heads and doors, conducted a stampede over another police officer. Are those the law-abiding Americans she's talking about that are being railroaded? Weaponizing the national security state to go after political opponents. I guess this is going after our fearless leader, or her fearless leader, Donald Trump, that the DOJ is being weaponized, which is kind of interesting because if you really look at the Trump classified documents case, I mean, the truth is they did everything humanly possible not to go to Mar-a-Lago. They did everything humanly possible to quietly end this. You had the National Archives begging Trump and his lawyers to hand back classified documents and other material for over a year. You had the DOJ issue a subpoena to Trump, which was sealed. Nobody knew about it. They only went in after they got a tip. He's lying. He's got more boxes. Does she think that Trump should just sit there with hundreds of classified documents? What is she talking about? And it's interesting when she talks about weaponizing the national security state to go after their political opponents. You were in Congress when Donald Trump and his Department of Justice prosecuted Julian Assange. Say what you want about Obama. I'm not a fan. He didn't prosecute Julian Assange. His DOJ decided they couldn't do it. If they did it, they'd have to go after the New York Times and other publications that publish the same kind of classified material that Julian Assange did. Literally, Yahoo News broke the story that Trump's CIA was plotting to kidnap and assassinate Julian Assange. Why? because he exposed the war crimes of the military-industrial complex that Tulsi claims to care so much about. Trump weaponized the national security state to go after Julian Assange, a fearless, world-renowned publisher who exposed war crimes. Is that what she's talking about? Weaponizing the national security state? Because that was Trump who did that. Finally, on the nuclear war thing, I give her points for that. She's right. I've been against this Russiagate stuff since 2016. I'm not one of these leftists who cheer on Putin and focus on, oh, Ukraine's got Nazis, so let's ignore the fact that Putin invaded Ukraine and is killing all these innocent people and targeting civilian targets. It's nuanced. Russia, the Soviet Union, was lied to by NATO, the U.S. NATO and the U.S. did go further east of reunified Germany when they promised the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union collapsed, that they would not. So Russia has a right to feel threatened. That does not absolve Putin of invading Ukraine and killing all these innocent people. It also, as I covered last week, Biden should not be publicly or privately talking about nuclear Armageddon. And the U.S. should be pushing for a diplomatic resolution to this. But give me a break that you are against the elitist cabal in the Democratic Party and the warmongers in the Democratic Party. You are still actively participating in the Horn of Africa, hunting Al-Qaeda. Give me a break. And you know what? If we want to keep it real, I didn't focus on this in 2016 because, frankly, Bernie got some donations from workers at pharmaceutical companies, workers at oil companies. So I didn't think it was right. If I was not going to call that out for Bernie, I wouldn't call it out for Tulsi. But when you look at her circle of grift now, well, Tulsi Gabbard got over $100,000 from arms dealers in the 2016 cycle. Lockheed Martin and Boeing were two of Gabbard's largest donors during the 2016 election cycle. Principled she is. So the circle of grift is complete. And she might not officially move to the Republican Party. I don't really think it matters. Mark my words, she will be one of the prime speakers at the RNC in 2024.